This week on Not Sam Wrestling, we got my buddy X-Pac on the show to talk about being in the Hall of Fame. We got so much to talk about with Kofi Kingston, Roman Reigns, all the returns, figuring out, making sense of the WWE roster, and so much more. This is Not Sam Wrestling.
This is Not Sam Wrestling.
Introducing your host from New York, here is Sam Roberts.
Yeah, hey, thanks for the Not Sam Shill sign on SmackDown this week. Did you guys see that? I tweeted out the video. One of you great shills, I think it was WWE Front Row, was at SmackDown this week. And if you're watching during the Carmella R-Truth segment where R-Truth is deciding to do the triple threat with Rey Mysterio and Andrade, you can see a big Not Sam Shill sign in the background. Of course, if you want to be a Not Sam Shill, if you want to support the podcast in the best way possible, all you have to do is sign up. Be a Not Sam Shill at patreon.com/NotSamWrestling. It starts at less than $1 a week. Way less than $1 a week. It's like nothing. You can give me $1 a week to help support this thing? So much content. So much content to give to you today. Patreon.com/NotSamWrestling. Or just keep being a cheapskate and enjoy the free one. Hey, it's going to be a good show today. You know why it's going to be a good show? I always get happy, especially happy, when Raw and SmackDown are good. When it's, I tape these on Wednesday, obviously. They come out first thing Thursday morning. But Monday and Tuesday is crunch time. And as I'm watching, if Raw and SmackDown both suck, I'm sitting there going, come on, guys. I got to pull a podcast out of this. What are you doing to me? But when Raw and SmackDown are good, I go, I got a lot to talk about this week. No problem. If they're lousy TV shows, I'm sitting there going, I got to sit in my studio for an hour just yapping to myself about what? About what? There's not anything to talk about on these shows. But when you got stuff going on like this week, I'm sitting there cutting stuff. I need 5 stories this week. That's sorry. That one's not going to happen. This one's not going to happen. It's all so good. It's been a very, very busy week for me. Of course, we did the big joint Not Sam Wrestling, Major Brothers Wrestling Figure Podcast War at Caroline's on Broadway. If you're hearing this when it first comes out last night, it was Wednesday, February 27th is when it all went down. If everything goes according to plan, next week we'll be able to get into everything that went down at that live event and talk about it and the whole deal. This week, we're going to talk about everything that's going on in WWE for the most part. But before we get there, we got to get into the interview segment. It's Hall of Fame time, and I love Hall of Fame time. I love when the names start getting introduced and the graphics come up on Instagram and he's going in, she's going in. We found out the Honky Tonk Man's going in this week, but last week we found out that DX was going in. And there's 3 reasons why I'm happy. Well, there's a lot of reasons why I'm happy about that. First of all, I'm happy for everybody involved. Road Dogg. I don't know Billy Gunn, but I'm happy for him. Chyna. Triple H, Shawn, of course. I'm happy DX is going in. I'm happy. Here's the 3 main reasons. I'm really happy that DX as a whole is going in. DX shaped a lot of my childhood. Had me telling everybody to suck it. Nobody was sucking it yet, and I was telling everybody too. That's how young I was. But, just the idea that DX is being honored like this is just such a cool thing. They were such an important part of wrestling when I was growing up. I'm happy that Chyna's going in. This is a great way to get Chyna into the Hall of Fame. It's not. It allows people that worked with her the most closely to honor her on stage. It's not, as much of a bummer as it is sometimes when the guys that have passed away go into the Hall of Fame. And it allows the WWE to have a little buffer if they're trying to avoid some of the controversy in her past that maybe if she were a solo member of the Hall of Fame might come up. But I think at this point, the legacy of Chyna is what she did in the ring. I think as time passes, the important stuff is what people remember. And that's what people are remembering. But the third reason that I'm especially excited about this induction is because X-Pac's going in. I've been waiting for X-Pac to go in for a long time. I think he could go in on his own. But X-Pac, I was hoping it would either be X-Pac or the NWO or the Click or DX. Just some way to get a ring on that man's finger, because if anybody deserves a Hall of Fame ring, it's X-Pac. This guy still eats, sleeps, and breathes pro wrestling. If you're not listening to his podcast, you should. It's called X-Pac's 12360. It's great. There's a video version of it you can watch on YouTube. It's so cool. He interviews people, but his perspective is, to me, what is the most valuable thing. He's got such a great perspective on wrestling. But I've known him for a long time. He's done this podcast multiple times, and I really wanted to talk to him about his life right now and the fact that he is about to become a WWE Hall of Famer. So that's this week's interview. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time since it was announced that X-Pac was going into the WWE Hall of Fame, he is here on Not Sam Wrestling as my guest this week in our interview segment. It's X-Pac.
The Not Sam Wrestling interview.
That fucking beard is in effect. Yeah, hell yeah. Damn, man, I wish I could grow a fucking beard like that.
Well, on that note, that can only mean one thing with me. Back here on Not Sam Wrestling, a guy who's about to be a Hall of Famer. I mean, at this point, so like I always wonder, at this point, because it's been announced, there's no sort of weirdness about that, right? Like you're not going like, oh, don't say it until it actually happens. Now that it's been announced, it's like, no, I'm about to be a Hall of Famer.
You sort of. I'm gonna lie, Sam. I've said this already in other interviews I've done, and that I kind of thought maybe one day, DX, NWO, all the things I've done, something like this would eventually happen. Just wasn't sure if I was ever gonna, be alive to see it. The way things were going at one time. So now like this comes, right? And now I'm just like, geez, let me just make it to WrestleMania. Let me just make it to WrestleMania. Okay. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but that's a real thing going on in my head right now, Sam.
Well, I mean,
it's trying to live until WrestleMania.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as healthy as you are and have been for as many years as you have been now, that would be like the ultimate irony, right?
Yeah, man. And don't think about Warrior and you know what I mean? So,
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm pretty optimistic that you'll be alive for WrestleMania. I mean, maybe that's just me. Maybe that's not good for luck or whatever. But I'm optimistic that you're going to be alive for WrestleMania. I remember us talking about this. It might have been that weekend that Scott Hall went into the Hall of Fame, and you were saying that you hoped that something like this would happen, whether it was DX, whether it was the NWO. At the time, you were even talking about even the Click going in as a group. But in reality, I mean, is this probably the best case scenario for you?
It's the most ideal scenario for me.
Mm-hmm.
And for several reasons. Well, not several, a few. One of them being, and I'll just get this out of the way, like the thought of being up there on stage at the Barclays Center by myself giving a speech scares the living shit out of me. Okay? So I want all of my friends from DX to be right there with me as a big giant security blanket.
So you're not sitting there going like, oh, I wish I had gone in by myself. You're like, you know what? I'm going to get my ring. I'm going to get my time to talk, but I'm going to have all my friends with me, so we'll be okay.
In case I start shitting the bed, somebody could save me. No, I'll be fine. I just, and also, Sam, I think one Hall of Fame ring is sufficient. And if I had my choice, I would much rather be inducted with the people, and I've said this several times now, that I spent like the greatest time of my life with. It was the greatest time I've had in my life. It was the greatest period of time in my life.
Well, I mean,
in so many ways. In my family life, my professional life, health-wise, it was amazing.
And you know that, like, and I don't even know if you visualize this, but I've thought about it when they put together that package of who DX is and who the members are and why they're going into the Hall of Fame. I mean, you've got to think that there'll be at least some portion of that Eric Bischoff promo from that first night back in WWE.
Sure.
In that package, because I feel like that promo that you cut was what goes, okay, DX was here, but this is what the new version of DX is all about. Like, this is who we all knew then as Six-Pac coming in and cutting a shoot promo on Eric Bischoff, and now we're not going to sit here and play pretend wrestling. This is like real life now.
Yeah, and yeah, I just think that was such an important moment. Like, how do you say this without coming up? Like, that was incredibly important for DX to continue going with the momentum that they had built up, you know, prior to Shawn dropping the title.
Was that scary for you to be, okay, Triple H is going to come out on Raw, he's going to say DX isn't going anywhere, and everybody's going like, well, what is Hunter Hearst Helmsley going to do without Shawn Michaels? And you're the guy he calls out, because the Outlaws, I mean, were not immediately full-fledged members, and even on that night, I think it was at the end of the night, you guys jumped in the cage and everything with them. But in that moment, that first moment, the night after WrestleMania, when they said that DX is continuing, you were the only new addition.
Yeah.
You know, immediately. Was there any part of you that was like, oh my God, I got to go in and be the guy that goes, don't worry, we're going to be okay?
No, not at all. I mean, as far as being accepted and getting a reaction,
yeah,
I was confident that the reaction when I came out of the curtain would be just fine. It was once Hunter handed the mic to me. You know, I wasn't known as I'm the guy that rocks the mic. You know, one of the best guys, you know. I'm not one of the best promo guys. It wasn't my forte, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it was like, okay, well, now what? And before I went out there, Vince specifically said to me, they're expecting something big. Go out there and give it to them. He didn't tell me what to give to them. No one told me what to say. No one had any idea what I was going to say.
That's awesome.
Including me, besides a few things, a few key bullet points.
Uh-huh.
And it was rough. Like, if you go back and you watch the whole thing, it was a little bit rugged, but it was real.
Right. And people sense that. And by the way, that's that brass ring, right, that Vince McMahon always talks about. That's that moment that you have to be able to recognize. When Vince McMahon looks at you and goes, they're expecting something big, that's that moment where it's not like, oh, my God, I have to deliver because Vince wants it. It's Vince knowing that, look, this is the make or break moment for you here. Not because I say so, but because they say so. I'm giving you the opportunity to do something that's going to last forever. So go out there and make the most of it.
Yeah. And, and it was just, that was such a crucial moment in my career. And, I'm just really grateful that in those clutch situations, I've always like pulled it out of my ass, you know?
Yeah.
Like, no pun intended with the ass thing, 'cause, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know where we always end up going.
Yeah. So, yeah. And there's been other times, like I was just, I don't know, you follow my Twitter sometimes, but, you know, I tweeted out this clip of me getting chokeslammed by Scott when I was 1, 2, 3 kid, right?
I was watching it where the ring had no give.
It didn't give at all.
Yeah,
right? It was just ridiculous. Where was I even going with that?
I don't know. You were talking about your moments and making.
Oh yeah. Okay, so that moment, you know, okay, first I got knocked out right there. Then a little bit later in that match, I'm supposed to dive off the top rope, flip onto Scott Razor on the floor, grab the money and haul ass. Well, that's when I slipped and fell, and I took a shit and ate it on this concrete, head face first, knocked me out cold. So, and we were live.
And that was so you were knocked out the first time when you hit the ring.
Yeah.
So you were knocked out twice in that match.
Knocked out twice in the same match.
Oh my God! And that was the $10,000 match.
Yeah, and we had to go off the air with me getting the money and running out the door. And somehow we still managed to get that done. And it's moments like that where you got to either, I mean, my career would have taken a drastically different turn for the worse if I would have never gotten that money.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think people necessarily realize as much now as I remember watching back then as like a little kid that like nobody that looked like you, there wasn't a spot for cruiserweights in the WWE. Like there had never been anybody that looked like you with the attention getting put on you that you were getting. There was no way that somebody that was your size was in a storyline with somebody that was as hot as Razor, that was and it was going to end Raw like that. That Raw was going to end on you guys, and that had 6 weeks of build and everything. It just had never happened before with somebody your size.
Right, and more than my size, it was my look.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I came back from Japan, I was about 210, and like that's not like technically, there were some guys there that weighed around the same size. It's just they had much more mature looking physiques.
Right.
I was still sporting a kind of a little baby fat and still look like a kid.
Yeah, I guess that's interesting. Yeah, because I mean, you think back now and you're like, oh yeah, he was like, this tiny little thing, but 210 doesn't even get you on 205 Live.
People go like, oh, you were so small back then compared to now. Bullshit. Like, I'm 20 pounds heavier then. Maybe more.
Yeah, I guess it was just the look of it all. There was something, just the way you carried it. And you were right. You're a kid. Like, you were the kid, but you were a kid at the time.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't know how to diet. I didn't,
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I mean, I was bloaty and, I had a little bit of a gut. And,
but you could still flip.
Oh, yeah. I sucked at it, but I could do it.
Yeah, nobody else was doing it at the time, so why not? Did you at any point, when did you find out that this was the year that this was going to happen? Like, when did you get the phone call that DX was going in?
So was it last Monday they announced it?
Yeah.
So it was the previous Thursday.
Oh, so you just had the weekend that it was like, keep it a secret, but on Monday we're announcing this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I was so hard. Didn't anyone tell you? I'm pretty sure Kev shot you a text, didn't he? No?
No, I didn't.
Oh, no,
I didn't know. Yeah, no,
okay.
I was surprised as anybody else. I didn't know.
Yeah. Because I would have actually, like, you're one of the guys I would, like, I just decided I was going to keep it under my vest because, like you said, like, what if they just changed their mind?
Totally.
Right?
Totally. And also,
between now and Monday.
Yeah, and you start going, that's what I'd be thinking, dude. I'd be like, that's why I would never, when I first did one of the pre-shows, I was like, okay, I'm going to tell people like a week before, but I'm not telling anybody that anything's happening before then because they change their minds and all of a sudden you look like a fool. And yeah, I mean, I got the same thoughts that go across my head. But I was happy to be surprised. So you get the call on Thursday, and do they just go, I mean, do they ask you, or do they just know immediately, this is news, this is happening, and you're going to love this?
Well, no. I was expecting a much different phone call, to be honest with you, Sam, because probably a couple weeks prior to that,
mm-hmm.
Carano hit me up about renewing my Legends deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't know.
Really?
Yeah. And so I said some things, that I was a particular, there were some things that didn't go that well for me in it. Not gonna lie.
So you were a little critical about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I thought we were going to continue the conversation, like, finally a couple weeks later. And so when Carano was like, hey, can you talk? And then he finally got on the phone with me like a few hours later.
So you weren't
end of the day.
You weren't even looking forward to this conversation because you were like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. It didn't go well last time. I haven't changed my mind.
Yeah, not really. So, but still, I mean, anytime they want to have a conversation, I want to talk. Right?
Sure, of course.
Especially like as busy as they are, like if someone's actually has phone time for you.
Oh my God.
Because I don't have phone time for anyone.
Yeah.
So, anyways, he called me and he's like, yeah, I just talked to Paul and WrestleMania is going to be, I forget, or he said WrestleMania is going to be pretty interesting this year because I don't think it was interesting. I'm paraphrasing. I can't remember the exact word, but he was like, "You're going into the Hall of Fame."
Wow.
I was like speechless, Sam.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if they were recording it on the other end, waiting for some good sound bites, but they got a lot of different ones anyway. So, but I just expressed my gratitude and was just blown away, and still am, Sam.
Of course,
I'm blown away by all of this.
It's incredible. So they go, you're going into the Hall of Fame, and then do they say, like, and you're going in with DX, we're doing a whole thing?
Oh, for sure. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And then
it was like everything, you're going in, and it was the emphasis that Carano put on it was, and Chyna's going in with you.
Oh, that's great. That's what I was going to ask, because obviously that's going to be in your head and in everybody's heads.
It just to me, it wasn't going to happen otherwise.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking. What would you have said if they were like, look, we're putting you in the Hall of Fame, we're putting DX in the Hall of Fame, it's going to be you, Hunter, Shawn, and the Outlaws, and we're not going to do it.
You know what? Like, to speculate on something like that they wouldn't have done anyways.
Right.
Like, I'm not even going to go there.
Yeah.
Because it was never going to be suggested if we were going in that we were going in without her. She was such a huge part of that.
Yeah.
As important as anything.
Absolutely. I mean, it created the whole aesthetic originally it created the aesthetic of the group, and then talk about adding that element of attitude into it as the group evolved and as Chyna evolved as a performer. Like, I think that was crucial. You look at what Chyna was when DX first started as this kind of just silent bodyguard.
And I have to give the utmost credit, the most credit to Stone Cold Steve Austin, because he was the first big star that told Chyna, hit me with a flipper. And when she did, he went down and sold the fuck out of it. And if Steve Austin does it, how in the hell can anyone else in that company go, oh, sorry, can't do that. Can't sell for a woman.
Right. Because she...
Fuck out of here.
And he knew that, too. He knew that he sets the example.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
And it was great.
Yeah.
And boy, and she had a hell of a flipper. It wasn't hard to sell it either, Sam.
Yeah, it's amazing as you think about, like, the way she evolved as a performer and a personality and injecting attitude into the whole thing, and just she completely moved with DX and DX moved with her. It was really an amazing thing. I think it's also, I'm sure
I gotta give I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, go for it.
Like, I gotta give huge credit to Paul for just having the vision of doing something different, and not just doing the old, okay, we need a heater, let's get a new Diesel or a new Big Bubba, or a new like traditional bodyguard role, fill that role with the traditional one you would cast in that role.
Yeah.
Just great, like incredible vision and gamble. Well, not really gamble, because I knew it would work. Just to go out and do that.
Yeah. Well,
different.
but has he always been that kind of a person who will try different things and be kind of that visionary? Because, as a creative guy, I've only seen him and kind of known him and watched him be creative at this stage in his career. And at this stage, that's what he's doing. He's so smart and ready to try new things and see things differently and go in new directions. He's been like that forever.
Sure. Yeah. And he knows, like, okay, he comes from this, his life has been this way, like, since, he was a kid. And so, like, our life experiences, like, frame the way we look at the world. And he knows that other people have different life experiences and have different points of view on things. And, and okay, let me just give you an example. And, he was always there for me in my worst times. Like, I remember he came out here to LA when I needed to go to rehab. He came out here and got me and flew me to Atlanta and put me in rehab.
Wow.
This is before, I've told this story a little bit. I'll make it short. He put me, him and Vince both split the cost. They put me in rehab. This is before wellness policy stuff.
Oh, wow. So this wasn't even like a company thing. This was he dipped into his pocket and did it.
Yeah, him and Vince.
Yeah. That's amazing.
And, yeah. And at least I shit all over the help they paid for. Like, I mean, I wasn't ready for it, but I asked for it.
Yeah.
So, but like, anyways, it still paid off in the end.
Well, not only did it pay off in the end, but I'm sure like it lets you know that like these guys are your family. Like,
so anyways, what I was getting at, the point I was trying to make is Paul, like, he can't relate to any of my problems or struggles or traumas,
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, man, I never had any problem. Like I grew up in a healthy family and I can't relate to this, but like he still had sympathy and he was there for me.
Yeah.
And he understood he didn't understand, but it was still a thing.
That's part of it. I mean, that's the part that people don't get so often, right? Is that just because you don't understand doesn't mean that you shouldn't understand that you don't understand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he understands he doesn't understand a lot of things, and a lot of people don't,
Of course. I mean, and I'm sure that his upbringing and the way he lives his life is somewhat foreign to you.
Well, it's pretty cool though, because both of his parents are still together, and
right?
They're still married, and like, man, and I mean that's a testament to like, okay, keep your family together, right? Raise your children, and like good shit happens.
Yeah, I mean, as I've gotten older, like that's something that I've been thinking about more and more is that's the secret advantage. It's not about like how much money you come up with or going to this school or when you have a solid family and good parents, like it's such an advantage to go into the world.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one perfect example of it.
Yeah.
And it's also an example of like, okay, like because of all that, like he didn't feel the need to self-medicate, like and like his reality is pretty good. Like
right.
He doesn't need to fuck it up with chemicals to be able to get through it on a daily basis.
Right. Now have you and you clearly, I mean, and we've talked about this before, but like I feel like you must be at this point that you see since kind of living this life where you've been clean for all these years. I mean, looking in from the outside and looking at sort of a macro view of it, not going, piece by piece, but just looking at the big picture, your life has been pretty amazing since cleaning up your act.
It's, honestly, even the shitty parts have been pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Like, looking back.
Yeah.
It sucked at the time. And a lot of consequences for a lot of people. And so I don't mean to like make light of any of that.
Of course.
But just like the overall story is it's fucking mind blowing, and it's my story. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I just tell like stuff to people that I've told a bunch of times, so it flows real easy, out of my mouth, and I'm totally comfortable talking about being molested or, hanging myself or a lot of these things, and it blows some people away, like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
And then I'll be like embarrassed to talk about something silly, like, I don't know, I can't come up with an example, but there are some things that people go, so you'll talk about this, no problem, but then you have a hard time spitting this out.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, I mean, but that's going back to your life experiences where you're like, it was my reality. And for the rest of us, it's so far away from what we consider reality, but this is your life. But it's also, like, I feel like people should pay attention to your story, especially people that are going through a rough time. Because there was a time...
That are going through it right now.
Yeah, because there was a time when you were synonymous with bad habits. You were on the the death watch list. You were the one that people were like, he's just never going to get out of that hole.
Never.
And before you walked in a room, it's like, here comes X-Pac. They weren't talking about wrestling. They weren't talking about this. They were talking about drugs and everything else. Now,
and what a shame it was. But
it was a sad thing. Yeah,
so sad.
Now I feel like what you're famous for now is walking around everywhere with an adorable dog. And when people think about your past, they're really just thinking about the good times. They're just thinking about the stuff they loved watching, on wrestling. They're thinking about DX and the NWO and the 1-2-3 Kid. Like, as time has gone, all the good stuff and all the stuff that you're doing now is kind of diluting all the stuff that defined you for all those years.
Yeah. And it's like Kevin said, Undergaro, he's like, hey, it's your story. You tell it.
Exactly.
And yeah, God damn. I mean, that's so true. Like, don't let other people tell your story.
Yep. And you decide when it's over. Like your story,
Exactly.
like that thing, your story is not even close to done being written. Like you're midway through the story. Maybe there's a lot of chapters left to go.
Which is just crazy because I think about writing the book, and it's just like it's such a monumental task.
I mean,
Sam.
Yeah, it seems like with you're one of the guys who you'd need volumes like an encyclopedia.
And there's a lot, and because things they come out of my mouth so easy, and I have no problem telling them, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't traumatize me bringing some of this stuff up.
Right.
But have you ever heard of vicarious traumatization?
No, but I haven't heard of it.
But it's a fucking thing, Sam.
Really?
And yes, because I'm going to tell you, Kevin was trying to work on my book with me.
Kevin Undergaro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just the stories, just a handful of things, and it's just like it fucks a person up that's listening to this, trying to write this book.
He called me and he was talking at one point. This, it was probably several months ago, whenever it was that he was working on it, and he was like, I need an escape. I've been talking to Sean about his stories for his book, and it's really dark. It's really put me in this spot. Like, you're right. I mean, and I didn't know what the clinical name for it was, but I'm sure it's a thing.
It's absolutely. And so it's just a lot, maybe need more than one person to help me with that book.
yeah. Just have people take over sections so nobody has to deal with the whole thing.
Tag in.
Have you thought about that more now that you're like going into the Hall of Fame? It does put you on a different level of whatever, of personality, of superstar, of WWE, there's
a place in the book to go, okay, this is where I was and now I'm here.
Exactly. Have you thought about the fact that like a book or something like that is kind of the natural jump off point of going into the Hall of Fame? Because
the last one of those moments I really felt like I had with the company was us doing that WrestleMania thing with Hunter and Sting. Yep. So this is really actually the perfect spot.
Yeah, and the Hall of Fame, as much as WrestleMania moments last forever, like the Hall of Fame literally lasts forever. You're always going to be able to take a picture, hold it with that ring on your finger. It's always going to say Hall of Famer, WWE Hall of Famer, X-Pac. Like that's one of those things, when we're doing stuff on the kickoff shows or whatever, if somebody's in the Hall of Fame, that's how they're introduced. No matter when they went in, no matter what else they did, it's WWE Hall of Famer Booker T, WWE Hall of Famer Beth Phoenix, WWE Hall of Famer X-Pac. Have you thought at all, or do you know at all what the process is going to be in terms of figuring out who's going to induct you? Is that something that WWE is going to decide? Is that something that you guys are going to decide as a group? Or are you going to leave it up to Hunter and Sean? Do you have any preferences?
Well, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they asked me a question like that, and just something popped into my head was, what kind of be cool if Mike Tyson did it,
I was thinking Mike Tyson.
Because he was such a huge part of why DX, was successful and gave it such an early, huge gust of wind in its sails, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And plus, he's just a great guy. I think, and he did a great job when he accepted his Hall of Fame induction at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he absolutely did.
I thought about that.
Yeah, I think Mike Tyson is a good one. And then the other one that I came up with, the only other one, because some people have said Hall and Nash, which I think would work, but it was more like they would relate in the sense that their friends were living parallel lives from them. The person that I think that relates to you guys, probably out of anybody on the roster, is Mick Foley. I mean, I feel like Mankind was
we were there for his title win. Yeah.
Right. I mean, he was a pretty big part of being with DX, and you guys hoisting him up on your shoulders, I thought, for the cover of the magazine and everything, it really symbolized like DX is the big popular good guy group, and these guys are hoisting him up to let you know that Mankind is the king of the good guys right now.
Yeah. See, the thing is some things were explained to me when we went over when Carano, told me the news, when he broke the news to me. He told me like some things are going to change about the ceremony. Obviously there were some things that were problems, pretty much all the Hall of Fames, but especially last year.
Yeah, I mean, last year
guys just, taking their sweet time,
And it became an issue because when poor Goldberg and Mark Henry go up, people are clearing out, and I mean, the pictures are out there. The aerial shot, I remember because I stayed through the whole ceremony for everybody's speeches, and it was one of those things where very few people did, just because guys went for so long and it lasted for so long, and unfortunately, those aerial shots, because all the WWE personnel are sitting on the floor, you've got most of the floor empty, while guys like Goldberg and Mark Henry are. It
was just so sad.
Yeah.
It was so selfish.
Yeah.
So selfish. It's one thing where, the Dudleys and they had a pretty long segment there, but they did theirs like a good wrestling match. There were stages in that thing, and it was entertaining the whole time, and no one was bored and not knowing who the fuck is this guy even talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. So, sorry, I get a little wound up when we talk about all this.
No, you should.
It was just so selfish.
Yeah.
It was so selfish.
You mean for the guy, not like the Dudleys,
Yes.
for the guys who go on and just kind of ramble and take their sweet time, and it's like, I know that this is your one moment that you're getting, and it's been a while since you had a moment, but there's a lot of guys waiting to go up there, and you're taking up their time, and if you're doing one of these speeches,
you just don't give a fuck,
right?
Obviously.
Right, because that when you're doing one of these long speeches, just because you have the audience, they're leaving as soon as the lights go down and the music hits. Everybody's getting up to go to the bathroom, and nobody's coming back.
Yep.
Yeah. So they are.
So anyways,
yeah.
Things are going to change. There may or may not be inductors.
Oh, interesting. Meaning they may just whoever's hosting.
Because I've seen some inductors take 30 minutes to fucking give their inductor speech.
That's a good point too.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I'm telling you, Scott Hall, your buddy Scott Hall put everybody to shame, in the sense that, look, when Scott Hall
got his shit in, he got all the stuff he needed to say in.
Everything, and it's a classic speech. He was 100% right on. It was a classic speech. Everybody was waiting for it. Not only was it Razor Ramon, one of the biggest guys ever, it was Scott Hall, one of the biggest guys in WCW, and it was one of the greatest stories of, like we were just talking about with you, going from something so dark to something so good. It was like you could have gone out there and just sucked all the time out of the room if you wanted to. But he went out there, he got his shit in, it took him 20 seconds, and he was out the door, and it was like, yeah, that's how you make an impact.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
And I want to mention real quick how like the other really cool thing, like coolest thing about this is to me is Road Dogg's. Road Dogg, he inducted his father into the Hall of Fame, and now his father's going to be able to see him inducted.
It's amazing.
And that's fucking huge to me because I just love that whole family so much.
And Road Dogg's another one that, like, his story is unbelievable. And you talk about good things happening to a good guy. Like, it's just it's so cool. That's kind of the story of a lot of you guys in DX. Like, it's really, I mean, the story of the group is amazing, but then individually. And when you look at that, honestly, you could absolutely say X-Pac, 1, 2, 3 Kid, 6-Pac, like there's no doubt about it. You could go into the Hall of Fame by yourself. I think, you want to be humble, but I think you know that. The Outlaws could go into the Hall of Fame by themselves. Chyna could go into the Hall of Fame by herself. I think Hunter eventually, it'll be, he should go into the Hall of Fame by himself. Like
I don't think that's going to happen.
You don't think he'll ever put himself in?
Nope.
The same way Vince will never go in?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's probably, but you know what I'm saying. Like everybody in that group could go in individually. You don't need to go in as a group, but the fact that you are going in as a group is, I think, actually adds to everything.
It does. And, yeah, I wouldn't want it any other way, Sam. I honestly wouldn't, man. Like, this isn't just me saying the things that, sound good.
Right.
That's real nice of him being humble. Like, this is legit exactly how I feel. Like, people that know me know I don't bullshit like that. Like, I don't just say, because, like, people, like, I just said something about this yesterday. People are going, well, what about this person? They were with DX. What about Rick Rude? Rick Rude fucked off.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He fucked off, like, on bad terms and was like, fuck these guys.
Yeah.
So I don't understand that one.
Right. I mean, that's he wasn't part of the family of DX.
Yeah. Huge Rick Rude fan.
Right.
He's in the Hall of Fame.
Right. Right. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't fit. He never fit with DX in the first place.
Yeah, it was always a weird thing, especially you had Chyna. You don't need Rick Rude.
Because he wasn't going to do anything.
Right.
Because he couldn't, because he was collecting a Lloyd's of London insurance policy. They were just giving him something to do.
And honestly, when you think...
And he wasn't even, sorry. Sam,
no, go ahead.
Like he wasn't even on the same page as them. Like, all that shoot promo, like shooting, like real life issue stuff. Like he was, like, that was all totally foreign to him. He's like, what? Like, I heard all about it. Like, so it was like, he was kind of like definitely not a DX guy.
Yeah.
But he was a DX.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally. That makes 100% sense. Yeah. And when you look at it, like, really, out of, you, Outlaws, Chyna, Shawn, Hunter, when you think back, like, those are the times that people love. Not to say that people didn't love when you guys weren't in DX, but you think back and you go, X-Pac, I remember him in DX. Hunter, I remember him in DX. Shawn, I remember him in DX. When you think back on Rick Rude, you think of 80s, WWF. Yep. What I'd like right now is For All You. That's Rick Rude in his prime.
Out of shape. Insert the name of the town.
Yeah. And that's the Rick Rude that went into the Hall of Fame. That's the one that should have gone into the Hall of Fame. Yeah, I think so too.
Tori, who was my valet/manager, for the heel run, and was it 01? I think that was.
Yeah.
But, like, she was great and definitely going to be thanked and mentioned.
Yeah.
Up there by me for sure.
Mm-hmm. So. How long do you think you're gonna, like, in your head? There's 5 of you up there. Well, there's Shawn and Hunter and the Outlaws and you, and then maybe somebody representing Chyna. There's 5 or 6 of you guys up there. How long do you realistically think that you as an individual are going to go?
No more than 5 minutes.
Right. And it's one of those things, like, get it in, go on. You get one more chance to make an impact. Yeah.
I could get a TV match done in less than 5 minutes. I can get a goddamn Hall of Fame and acceptance speech done in under 5.
Hey, what do you think? And we're going to talk about it this week on the podcast. But what do you think of what's going on with the roster in WWE right now? Because they are, I mean, more so, I feel like, than any year, as they're going into WrestleMania right now. I feel like they're just going, you know what? We're not going to commit to who the biggest star in the company is. I mean, you look at it, like, just in 3 weeks, they've elevated Kofi Kingston. They've brought in Aleister Black, Gargano, Ciampa, Ricochet. They've brought back Kevin Owens. Roman Reigns is coming back. Batista's coming in. Like, all this stuff, plus everybody that's already been on the roster this entire time.
Yeah. I don't think for Kofi elevated himself more than anything. Mm-hmm. I mean, they gave him the opportunity.
Yeah.
But, I really think that it was just, he capitalized on a sad, unfortunate situation with Mustafa. being hurt, and like Kofi wasn't figured in that until like
No way.
Mustafa got hurt.
But
And he
they are
capitalized on it, and good for him.
and they're going with it, right?
Yes.
There have been times in WWE where even if you capitalize it, they just don't go with it. Like they're in a phase right now where they're going with it.
And the funny part about that to me is like, I mean, yeah, you go with it, but you still have to pretend like you're not going with it on TV to get heat.
Of course.
And to give the babyface some obstacles to overcome.
Right.
But, you got people already going, oh, Kofi got screwed. Like, this is bullshit.
But it's kind of...
Like, it's part of the show, you guys.
But
Jesus.
It's kind of great, though, because they're finally figuring out a system of good guys and bad guys where they're actually getting people to cheer for good guys and boo bad guys and get upset when bad things happen. Like Charlotte is getting booed on the internet, on YouTube. Her views are getting disliked on Twitter. She's getting trashed, and
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah,
because Charlotte is the perfect example I want to make here. Like online, like the internet wrestling community online, like outrage is the new heat.
Yeah.
Is the new heel. Is the new booze.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's yes. So it's all working perfectly according to plan.
I agree 100%.
They just don't know they're being. They just don't know that that's what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean,
that's their new way of booing, guys.
It's amazing, and I feel like it took years to really wrap the head around how social media impacts wrestling and blah blah blah, but they're really starting to get a hold on the fact that
you understand what I'm saying by this, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's the way think
some people are going, "Oh, what do you mean it's the new booing?"
No, I mean you're going and saying like, you guys that have been too smart you're getting
worked.
Yes, 100%. They're getting people on Twitter to not like the bad guys and to like the good guys. Like that's been the mission.
You're reacting according to plan.
100%. You're supposed to be upset. You should be sending nasty tweets about what's going on with Charlotte, right? You should be pissed off that Kofi Kingston is getting screwed. That is not right. And it's not right. And it's like, yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be done. It's really cool, I think. Like it makes me excited when I see people going like, yeah, you're booing the right things and cheering the right things. And I'm with you. When I say booing, I don't just mean in the arena. I mean on Twitter and on Instagram and on
all the same, man.
Yeah. And yeah, that's the new cheer and boo is clicking the thumbs down on YouTube. When the statistic came out and it said Charlotte just beat Roman Reigns for having the most disliked YouTube video on WWE's YouTube page. And this was like an old Roman Reigns video, not anything that he's doing now. But like, I was like, this is exactly what should be happening. The bad guys should be getting the dislikes. And that's what's happening. It's great. But what do you think of all the new faces showing up now?
From NXT?
Yeah.
Oh, I like it a lot.
Yeah.
It was a head scratcher how they were introduced the other week though. Like, and unfortunately, the first night was in Lafayette.
Oh my God!
And,
yeah.
Oh my God, they were the shits.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you see Pat McAfee's YouTube video that he did?
I did, and I saw Cornette's response to it, like making fun of it, like, oh, you're blaming the crowd, like. Look, okay, you can say the product this or that, but we're just talking about comparing that crowd to the next night.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Both are the same product.
Right.
Same company, and that's all. It was just saying, relative to everything going on, they were the fucking shits.
Yeah. Yeah, because the shows weren't that drastically different between Monday and Tuesday.
And I'm going to tell you, and I like it. And I think that it's going to like light a fire under certain people's asses. And because immediately, like after seeing Aleister Black, Ricochet, who else is out there?
Gargano and Ciampa?
Yeah, Gargano, Ciampa, all that. Like all the other matches, like the in-ring style looked really antiquated.
Yeah.
It was like they were still relying on old ways and old routines of doing things. And then you're watching like Alistair and different guys, like all these innovative ways of going into the ropes and just all these cool things that make everything stick out, even the small things.
Yeah. Yeah, my theory.
It's not just new moves and fancy moves. It's new ways of going in and out of things.
Yeah. I mean, just the way, for me, Aleister Black, the way he just moves in the ring and the way he tells his stories and the way he makes you understand the character while the match is happening. I'm like, I haven't seen that in a long time. It's just so cool. I'm very into it. Do you think, my theory here is that part of this, obviously this is to get people excited about wrestling and introduce new characters and blah, blah, blah. But I really think that part of this is just like when any other company starts hiring new people to shake things up. I mean, I really think that behind the scenes, part of this is probably Vince McMahon and whoever else. It's Triple H. I don't know.
No one's entitled to a spot.
Right. Making it so that the people who have been there for a while maybe are a little less comfortable. Maybe not thinking to themselves, well, this is my spot and I'm in the spot now. Like, let's start shaking things up and giving out a lot of opportunities to a lot of people and see who rises to the top.
Yeah. So there's been some people in the industry that said there's no place for tenure in the wrestling industry. I totally disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
No, I partly disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Tenure is important, but it can't be the only thing. Like, I mean, you still have to bring it, and you still, like, you can't just rest your laurels on your fucking tenure.
Right.
Right. So, like, it has to still be a thing.
Yeah.
There still has to be, like, dues paid and, okay, and all these years and this hard work. And so, but still, like, it doesn't mean you're entitled to this spot.
Right. Totally. Well, look, the same thing works in podcasting. There's a lot of podcasts out there, and nobody's entitled to being the champion of podcasts. But I think that you should be giving them all a try. And I'll tell you, one of the finest wrestling podcasts out there is Xbox 12360. And I talk about it all the time. Like, you do great interviews, but your perspective on what goes on in the ring, in WWE and AEW, in whatever it is, just your take on what goes on is to me what keeps me coming back to your show. It's just it's so unique and smart. I love listening to it, so I recommend it to everybody.
Thanks, man. People know I have guests on the show, but a lot of these weeks, like this week, there's just plenty to talk about.
Yes.
And it's weird because, like, I'll have big name guests on, and then I'll do episode with no guest and have a good subject and do bigger numbers.
Yeah, I mean, look, you are the guest. Like, I mean, it's X-Pac. Like, you talking about a certain subject, and I was having the same conversation with Booker T when I did his show. He goes, "It's amazing. I've been uploading stuff to YouTube where it's just me talking about stuff, and it does better than when I have guests in." And I'm like, yeah, you guys, part of the beauty of you hosting a podcast and Booker hosting a podcast and guys like you, your caliber of superstar hosting a podcast is that you guys are guests. You guys are the guys that I bring in to try to get my numbers up. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You're good to get your own numbers up on your own. It's that's the beauty, and that's where the tenure comes in. If you can come up with something that's interesting to people, you have enough tenure that your take is worth people tuning in for, whether you have a guest or not.
Yeah. So about that tenure thing again, like, I think that, okay, how that tenure, like just a place in the company, like, tenure should give you, but not always a certain spot on the card.
Totally. Well, thanks, man. I always appreciate you making time for me, and congratulations. I texted you congratulations, but I wanted to have a full-fledged conversation with you about this. I'm so excited. I don't know if we've ever talked about it or not, but X-Pac did a very nice thing for me. WrestleMania 30 in New Orleans, before I was, anywhere near WWE or anything, the first time that I got to actually be close and stay in the same hotel as the WWE talent and hang out in the friends and family box at WrestleMania and all this stuff was because you invited me down to WrestleMania 30.
They were trying not to give you a spot there either. I'd like to kind of go off a little bit.
I mean,
I'm not going to lie about that. Like, yeah, I was like, no. Anyway, here's the thing. Like, and I'm not like, Sam, I recognize greatness in you from the first time you interviewed me, and I'm not like you could sit there. I see you kind of going, oh, gee, shucks. But and on top of it, I'm really grateful for your friendship, and I always and you're just an amazing human being on top of everything. So I'm grateful for your friendship, Sam, and so yeah. Thanks,
you're a good man, and I can't wait to just be around and celebrate this with you, man. I'm really excited for it.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Here is Sam Roberts.
Everybody needs an X-Pac in your life, Everybody needs an X-Pac in your life. That guy, I can't even... His story, he needs to have a movie written about him at some point. His story is so fascinating. And just the low that he went to and the highs that he's on right now. I mean, you talk about good people in the wrestling business. X-Pac is one of them. He's no matter what, he's always been a good friend. And I am so happy to see that guy going into the Hall of Fame. So happy. And I'm so happy that he's so happy to be going into the Hall of Fame. Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind. First of all, that's why the DX thing is so cool. And I think we talked about this, but that really, obviously, Shawn's in by himself. Triple H can and will go in by himself. But the New Age Outlaws, Chyna, X-Pac, all deserve to be in the Hall of Fame by themselves. Think about what X-Pac has done. X-Pac, a member of the NWO, one of the original members, not one of the original members, but still one of the original members. Six-Pac was an important part of the NWO. Before that, the 1-2-3 Kid, really the guy who at least brought cruiserweights to the mainstream on WWE TV. There were other cruiserweights before 1-2-3 Kid, but not that were as much of household names as the Kid was. And then to come back as X-Pac, I mean, the guy has had 3 impactful, major, huge runs over 3 very distinct eras. 3 really important eras, 1-2-3 Kid, 6, and X-Pac. And what's nice is that they're all sort of in line with each other. It's not like he had to reinvent himself every time. He just evolved. That's the evolution of Sean Waltman as a wrestler, and I just think it's so cool, man. I remember as a kid picking up old wrestling, or they weren't old at the time, but grabbing wrestling magazines from the supermarket and just reading about the Lightning Kid, and then going home and turning GWF on ESPN and hoping that the Lightning Kid showed up, because really for a small kid, like I was tiny, man. The 1-2-3 Kid was the one guy that made it seem like, oh, small guys can be wrestlers. Like, it isn't so stupid. Now, unfortunately for me, not only was I a small guy, but I lacked any sort of athletic ability whatsoever. So, as it turns out, X-Pac has tremendous athletic ability. So that's where we part ways. But had I actually applied myself to athletics, maybe. You never know. Maybe. Speaking of the Hall of Fame, before we get into the state of wrestling, big news dropped on Tuesday. The Honky Tonk Man. I'm just a honky love. Come on, baby, whisper in my ear. Honky Tonk Man going into the Hall of Fame. Now, that's a big deal. Hall of Fame is really interesting because that's 2 entries already. 2 going in this year that people wondered if they would ever go in. Honky Tonk Man was on that list of guys that it was like, no, I don't think they'll ever have Honky back. Chyna was on that list of people. I don't think they'll ever want to acknowledge Chyna. But you know what? Jeff Jarrett was on that list, and he went in last year and is now working for WWE. I mean, WWE is it's a very open place, and that's always been kind of the legend, that if it's right for business, WWE will do that. But all you have to do is look and see that it's true. Jeff Jarrett is working full-time backstage at WWE right now. When he was here in the basement with me, when he was here in the Notsam studio, he was as surprised as anybody was when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. But this year already, to see 2 people go in that WWE or that fans thought would never be involved in a WWE thing again is pretty remarkable, and it's fun. It lets the fans know, and this is something I've been talking about for a long time. Part of the WWE network and WWE buying up the intellectual property and the tape libraries of WCW, of ECW, of the territories, of all this stuff, is that as pro wrestling evolves, WWE is becoming the historical site of pro wrestling. When you talk about wrestling history, it's all becoming WWE history. They're owning all of it. And it's not necessarily just so they can control the narrative. In reality, it's because they trust themselves to be responsible with the history of the industry. If anybody's going to put on a full-fledged wrestling museum, it's going to be WWE. If anybody's going to be the landmark Hall of Fame, it should be WWE. And in order to do that, you do have to go outside your comfort zone a little bit and make sure that everybody's represented. And I mean, you look at Honky Tonk Man, greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time, one of the most memorable over-the-top characters of the 80s, ended up in WCW as well. Like, I definitely think Honky Tonk Man deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. You know, so I'm excited to see what that's going to look like. You know, already, I'm excited for DX's speech at the Hall of Fame. I'm excited for the Honky Tonk Man speech at the Hall of Fame. I think it's going to be a fun night. I think the Honky Tonk Man is a really interesting, good choice for the second person. We'll see as the weeks go on who else is going in. Of course, there was that rumor going around that the Hart Foundation were going in. First of all, you wonder if two groups, DX and the Hart Foundation, would go in the same year. And second of all, if that's true, you've got Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels both getting rings at the same ceremony. That's a biggie. That's a biggie. We'll see what happens. That's just a rumor. We'll see. Lots of rumors going around, lots to talk about, lots to break down. A lot happened this week in the world of professional wrestling, and the only place we can do that properly is here on Not Sam Wrestling, inside a segment that we call The State of Wrestling.
It's now time for this week's State of Wrestling.
Hey, welcome to the State of Wrestling. My God, what a week it's been. What a week it's been. Of course, by the way, if you want to watch the entire State of Wrestling on video, the only place to do that is on Patreon, patreon.com/NotSamWrestling. The video of the State of Wrestling every week goes up for all of the Not Sam shills that are, I believe, level 2 and above. It starts with the audio level. The second is the video level. You'll be able to not only, if you're a member of the Not Sam shills, if you're a member at patreon.com/NotSamWrestling, is there an option to watch the full State of Wrestling on video, but you can even watch it live as I'm recording it here in the Not Sam studio every single week. And the only way to do that is to be on Patreon. So go ahead and join us. Support the show. Patreon.com/NotSamWrestling. Now, you know, here on the State of Wrestling, we only do one thing, and that's break down this world of pro wrestling from the perspective of yours truly, the last professional broadcaster, Sam Roberts, and we do it with the top 5 stories of the week, according to me. So, I think that this week, all 5 of the stories really kind of rotate around one somewhat central theme, and I think that that's the way to do it. For me, most of what this week spelled out rotated around one central theme. And we'll get into that as we go. But the number 5 story, and this is something that I've really been thinking about over the last, 24 to 36 hours, basically since SmackDown. And it's the story of Asuka. And where the hell is Asuka? Where is Asuka? So I was totally okay. First we see Asuka at the Royal Rumble. And she makes Becky Lynch tap out. On the same night that Becky Lynch wins the Royal Rumble and announces that she's going to WrestleMania to fight Ronda Rousey, only a few hours before that, she had a match, opened the show, SmackDown Women's Championship, Becky Lynch versus Asuka, and Asuka not only beats her, but makes her tap out. I was not one of the people that had a problem with this. I thought this was great. I thought it was a good way to make Becky Lynch come out looking like she was ready to really start this road to WrestleMania with Ronda Rousey without damaging Asuka whatsoever. In fact, making Asuka look stronger on the way out of the Royal Rumble as well. Then, between the Royal Rumble and the Elimination Chamber, from one pay-per-view to the next, there was, maybe a couple of vignettes for Asuka, but Asuka was not on SmackDown. Now, the first couple weeks, I was actually okay with it. I said, you know what? WWE needs to spend some time establishing the Becky Lynch Charlotte, Ronda Rousey story, however that's playing out, that story is the main story to concentrate as far as the women division goes across Raw and SmackDown. Now, if they're going to do that, it's going to make Asuka feel secondary. And they don't want to make Asuka feel secondary because she's a big, big star. So, while we're establishing this Ronda Rousey, Becky Lynch, Charlotte, whatever's going on here, let's just keep Asuka off TV. That way, we're not making what she's doing seem less important. She's just not doing anything right now. She's the champ. She's hanging out. And it's like, okay, couple weeks, 2, maybe even 3. But we get to the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, and you've got all the women, for the most part, represented on that show. You know, you've got Becky Lynch doing the run-in. You've got Charlotte at ringside to watch Ruby Riott and Ronda Rousey. You've got the Elimination Chamber women's tag match. So right there, what is that? 4 and 2, so that's 6, 12. Plus Charlotte, 14, 16 women represented at the Elimination Chamber. 16 women were on that pay-per-view. Asuka was not one of them. Okay. Asuka has been on SmackDown once since the Royal Rumble in January, and it was to get pinned by Mandy Rose. We find out this week that we are getting a match at Fastlane. It's Asuka versus Mandy Rose. Now look, I'm not sitting there going, it's outrageous that Asuka got pinned by Mandy Rose, blah, 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 blah. Clearly, there's an asterisk next to the pinfall that Mandy Rose made on Asuka. She used her bad guy techniques, got lucky. She had a lucky night. Asuka had an unlucky night. No problem. But then again, this week on SmackDown, there's no Asuka. Realistically, if we're dealing with the Asuka that we used to deal with and that we should still be dealing with now, being that she's a women's champion that won the title in a triple threat match with Becky Lynch and Charlotte, and then made Becky Lynch maybe the most popular superstar overall in WWE right now, made her tap out at the Royal Rumble. So she took out Charlotte and Becky in a ladder match. Then she took out Becky via tap out to establish the fact that she is unquestionably and undisputedly the SmackDown Women's Champion and deserves to be called that. So in the meantime, she's not on TV at all. And it's been so long that realistically, when we see Mandy Rose versus Asuka, what does Mandy Rose have to be afraid of? We get the one narrative from the Raw Women's Champion, which is Ronda Rousey, and that's a champion fights. I'm on Raw every week. I'm always fighting. If I can't fight my real opponent, Becky Lynch, I don't want to fight at all. Like it's the title, the title. I'm a champion. I'm a champion. I'm a champion. And then you turn around and it's like, well, I guess there's a SmackDown Women's Champion, but all of a sudden Asuka has gotten Brock Lesnar's schedule, and it's just not around. And it doesn't give you this feeling of, oh, there's a really strong, worthy, fighting SmackDown Women's Champion right now. Oh, Asuka is this terrifying thing. So Asuka comes to the ring, and she's dancing, and she's got her big fur coat on, and she's got rainbow-colored hair, and she's got bright animal print all over the place. And the only reason that works is because while everything is so bright and fun and over the top, underneath all of that is this vicious, dangerous competitor. And what we're seeing is everything on top, but no vicious, no dangerous. None of it. Mandy Rose should be terrified. Mandy Rose should be sitting there going, I don't know, man. I mean, I want to be the SmackDown Women's Champion. I want an opportunity at this title, but I don't know if I'm ready to put my body on the line against somebody like Asuka in a championship match. This could be really bad for me. This could be career shortening. I've never, ever had a threat in front of me like Asuka. This is scary. But nobody's feeling that. Nobody's sitting there going like, uh-oh, Mandy Rose is in a lot of trouble. I mean, honestly, if I told you Mandy Rose is probably going to win the SmackDown Women's Championship, you'd probably go, oh yeah, SmackDown has a women's title too, because Asuka's nowhere. And I'm not blaming Asuka, because I'm a huge Asuka fan. But it's hard to be a fan of somebody when you can't see them do their thing. So I can only hope that Asuka will retain at Fastlane, and then we will use the time between Fastlane and WrestleMania to really, really sink our teeth into whatever Asuka's WrestleMania match is. I mean, the Asuka-Charlotte match a year ago at WrestleMania, people were actually surprised when Charlotte won. There was this real feeling that Charlotte may not be able to beat Asuka. Asuka's just she's gonna just roll over whoever she has to roll over. I mean, that's the vibe that started in NXT. People at TakeOver San Antonio, when I think it was Dallas TakeOver. No, it wasn't Dallas. Maybe it was Dallas. Yeah, it was TakeOver Dallas. At TakeOver Dallas, when Asuka beat Bayley for the NXT Women's Championship all those years ago, people did not see that coming. They were like, what is this all about? And that was the beginning of the story of Asuka and creating this unbeatable female superstar, the likes of which we've never seen before. And I'm not seeing that right now, even as women's champion. And the reason I'm not seeing that right now is because I'm not seeing her. And I think you got a lot of work to do as you head towards Fastlane and then WrestleMania if you want Asuka to be taken seriously as champion. And if you don't, if we're going, okay, we're done, Asuka's boring, we're done with Asuka, well then, why go to all the trouble of having Becky Lynch tap out to Asuka if not to use it to make Asuka look like $1 million? Because right now, Asuka looks like about $350. And that's because I've only seen her once since the Royal Rumble, and it's a loss. So we'll see what happens. The match was made official. It's Asuka versus Mandy Rose at Fastlane. If it were up to me, Asuka would make minced meat out of Mandy Rose. Just tear her up. Beat her, tap her out, make it seem like, oh my God, what was Mandy Rose thinking entering into this competition? And then Asuka comes out on SmackDown and reminds everybody on SmackDown, oh wait, you guys probably forgot because I've been gone for a month and a half or two, maybe 2 months at this point. You guys probably forgot. Probably a month and a half. None of you are ready for Asuka. Oh, that's right. And then we find out who Asuka's opponent will be, and it could be a lot of people for WrestleMania. You have to believe that the women's tag title will be on the line too, with Sasha and Bayley defending, unless Nia and Tamina win the titles at Fastlane. But there could be a WrestleMania rematch between those two teams, or it could be a different team. I'm not so against the idea of spending the next month building Sonya Deville and building Sonya Deville and building Sonya Deville, and maybe you've got a tough fight between Sonya Deville and Asuka for that SmackDown Women's Championship at WrestleMania. Your other women's title match, assuming that Charlotte is involved with Becky and Ronda Rousey in that Raw Women's title match. That's the thing, and we've talked about it with the WWE Championship. That the luxury of having your big match, Universal title, Brock Lesnar versus Seth Rollins. Your big match, Raw Women's title, is Ronda Rousey versus Charlotte or Becky Lynch or Charlotte and Becky, whatever it is. Those are your two big male and female title matches, which means in the WWE Championship match and in the SmackDown Championship match, you can try some things. Just like last year at WrestleMania. They said, you know what? Since the big WWE Universal Championship match is Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns, we can go ahead and we can do Nakamura versus AJ. We can do that for the hardcores and say like, whoa, this is the match that you never thought was going to happen. We're doing it. You can try stuff. You can put Sonya Deville in a match like that, because if you go, well, that's not really WrestleMania worthy, okay, we'll see. Let's take a look at what Ronda's doing over here. And as we look at what WrestleMania is looking like, it doesn't seem like we're going to be hurting for big names or big matches. Let's move on to story number 4, speaking of stories and storylines and writers, news broke this week. I think I saw it on PW Insider, old Mike Johnson's website, first. I think that's where I saw it reported as first. That Bruce Prichard was returning to the WWE creative team, and not as a consultant or as a part-time, but it says, and I don't know, I mean, hopefully I'll see Bruce before long and I'll be able to ask or go to another show and catch the vibe or something. But, I mean, the internet is talking like Bruce is coming back to be Vince's right-hand man once again. Whether he's fully his right-hand man or at least on a creative level, work right next to Vince McMahon. Kind of, I guess, head up creative. I don't know if he's officially heading up creative or if he's just the person who Vince feels comfortable going back and forth with 24 hours a day. I don't know exactly what the relationship is going to be, but it's really unbelievable. Bruce Prichard, of course, has become very famous in the wrestling world in the last two or 3 years because of his great podcast, Something to Wrestle With. That podcast, I mean, within the first few weeks, I was telling you guys, this is the podcast that you got to listen to. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, and I always make time out of my week for Something to Wrestle With. Bruce Prichard and Conrad Thompson. Conrad is exceptional at what he does. Not only is he well-researched, but on his feet, he's a great conversationalist and asks all the right questions. Bruce has a tremendous memory for all the years that he was there, tells a great story, and luckily happens to be hilarious as well. It's just a very entertaining show, and I've been saying that since their show started. I didn't know how big it was going to be. I don't think anybody did, but it got big. But some of the stuff they talk about on that show, first of all, it's clear, especially in the early episodes, it's very, very clear that show was not started with the thought, this will ingratiate us and make us more friendly with WWE. This will get Bruce back in the door. If anything, it was like, look, Bruce, you got nothing left to lose. You're never going back to WWE. You might as well spill the beans, right? Bruce was the masked magician. Bruce decided to come out and say, look, I'm blackballed anyway. Here's what was really going on all those years in WWE. And somehow that podcast just has gotten so popular. And I think people have gained an appreciation for what guys like Bruce really did, Bruce and Pat Patterson and everybody, that it's sort of highlighted even more so what the creative process is in WWE. Now, Bruce was with WWE, I think, from the late 80s until 92. And then he was on sabbatical for a year and change, which, I think was just because he was a rotten guy, not a nice person. Then he came back in 93-ish, late 93, and stayed until the 2000s. I mean, he was there for, to build the Heartbreak Kid, and he was there for Doink the Clown, and he was there for John Cena. I mean, he was there for Kamala, and he was there for Kane, and he was there for, Muhammad Hassan. He was there for everybody, right? All these years. But he once again got fired in the 2000s. He did a whole podcast about what the process was, but clearly it felt like his time was running out regardless. And there was an incident, and he apparently had brought a gun or something to work. All this stuff. It just got very, very crazy. And I think Bruce, from all the years of doing what he was doing, was pretty burned out and wasn't adapting well to the way WWE was changing. And so he was fired and blackballed. He ended up working in TNA. He ended up doing a couple autograph signings, but at a point in his life, and we've talked about it with him on this podcast. He's done this podcast many times. He did the live show with us in Caroline's over SummerSlam weekend. And he talked about the fact that he played Brother Love, and that was such a big part of his life while that was happening and afterwards. I mean, Brother Love is an extremely famous character from the 80s. If you were watching wrestling in the 80s, you remember Brother Love. And he threw his Brother Love suit, the white suit and the red shirt and the white tie, he threw it out his car window at one point because he was so done with the world of pro wrestling. But he starts doing this goofy podcast with Conrad Thompson. And all of a sudden, they have a show on the WWE Network. And all of a sudden, Conrad is heavily involved in StarCast and AEW. And finally, we get to the late February of 2019. And the rumor is that Bruce Prichard is actually coming back to the WWE. Now, it's very, very clear to me that when the McMahons came out on Raw at the end of 2018, and they said it's time to shake things up, you know, everybody was kind of expecting a superstar shakeup. WWE has shifted creatively immensely since then. I mean, let's not even talk about the roster right now. Let's just look. You have to understand that everything that happens in WWE is happening deliberately. The creative team for a long time has been, you know, there's a couple of head writers that have been there, and then a team of young people that are, you know, running around in suits, putting a show together. It is not sort of the poolside chats of the 80s and the 90s. To inject Bruce Prichard, a relic, if you will, a piece of time gone by, into this new era of the way business is done, I believe that WWE and Vince McMahon are sitting there going, look, it's important to evolve, and it's important to change, but we were doing some stuff right back then. We don't have to change everything we were doing. And I think what WWE is trying to do is figure out how to evolve properly in the sense that you don't shut off everything that you were. Let's bring in the good stuff from what we were and put on top of that the great stuff from what we are now. Combine it. Don't just say we were that, but now we're this. Well, let's find some middle ground there. Let's realize that as much as this is a PG family-friendly product, you've also got adults that are not willing to let this thing go. So why let go of that audience? And I think WWE is starting to not only figure that out, but really embrace that. I mean, there's a reason, I believe, why Alexa Bliss's segments are all done later on Raw. And that's because, I mean, Alexa Bliss has evolved, in whether you like it or not, into a pretty edgy character with some sexual overtones. You know, the way she was talking about EC3 a couple weeks ago, the way she was talking about Finn Balor, the stunt that they did with her in the dressing room. Clearly, they want to inject a little bit of edge into that, right? Look at the way Kayla Braxton and Charlie Caruso are being used on Raw and SmackDown, respectively, right now. It's a big difference from even a month ago. Especially Charlie. I think Charlie has taken it like a fish to water. I love Kayla, too. But I think Charlie, because she comes from a news background, and Kayla might also come from a news background, but she just comes across like a reporter digging for dirt. You know, for a long time, the announcer's job, the backstage interviewer's job was, my guest at this time, Roman Reigns. Roman, what do you think of your match tonight? And then you just stare blankly, and then the wrestler does the talking. Now, we've got both, because I noticed Kayla was doing it this week on SmackDown as well. So clearly this is a new directive for what the backstage announcer role is. But they're allowing the backstage interviewers to be people who aren't just sitting there clearly being told, like they're not just a piece of cardboard with a question written on it. This is a human being with a brain and thoughts, and they're putting these thoughts together and actually speaking to a person, and we're witnessing it. As silly as it sounds, it hasn't been that way in a long time. They've changed that. You know, I mean, look at the way Raw is done now. Every segment bleeds into the next segment. There's no sort of, that's the end of the segment, commercial break, start a new segment. It's promo. The Riot Squad's music hits. We'll be back with the Riot Squad. Match. Oh, there's Alexa Bliss. We'll be back with her. Alexa Bliss. You know what I'm saying. You know, everything is being done differently. And I think that it's all coming off of that announcement that was made in 2018. I think that was serious. I think WWE is in a space right now of evolving into what they are going to be next. And you look at it, and it really makes sense. You know, coming out of the Attitude Era, the WWE had this period where it was a little mushy and they were trying to find themselves, and they were trying a whole bunch of things. That's when there were plenty of characters that came and went very quickly, people that popped into the main event and then exited the main event. But it was when John Cena and Randy Orton and Batista really kind of seized their opportunities. And every single time they performed, knocked it out of the park. And every single time they performed, tried to make it something memorable. Randy Orton was the best bad guy he could possibly be. John Cena, the best good guy he could possibly be. Batista, the best animal he could possibly be. And we didn't really enter into the era that we're in now until those superstars started taking shape. Because the reality is, we lost Stone Cold pretty quickly. We lost him from the ring without ever realizing we lost him from the ring. And after that, it was like cool to have him on TV, but it's just not the same. The Rock, the same thing, and it happened in short order. For the WWE to lose Steve Austin and The Rock, that's a huge blow. It's almost like losing John Cena and then losing Roman Reigns. And the WWE realizes, we got to do something here. We don't have the next guy ready to go. And honestly, who knows if Roman Reigns really is that next guy? And even if he is, who's there with him? Is Roman Reigns the next John Cena? Or is he the next Batista? Or the next Randy Orton? Or is he just something else? Is he just the first Roman Reigns? Either way, you need star power that's going to grow along the same lines, and maybe that's Seth Rollins with him. Apparently Dean Ambrose is leaving, so who knows? But I think that that's the point that we're at now. I think that the WWE is changing and is allowing the change to happen, and is in a place for the first time, really since John Cena rose to fame 10 years ago, where they're allowing stars to be built. And they're allowing things to happen organically. And WWE is allowing time to do what time does. They're allowing these superstars to be created right now. And to me, that's why the roster looks like what it looks like. That's why, in short order, right? I mean, think about what's happened just over the last 3 weeks. You've had Kofi Kingston being pushed right up to the main event because we gave him the opportunity and it worked. Let's see it go. You thought you had Lars Sullivan. What on earth happened to him? EC3, Heavy Machinery, Lacey Evans. You thought that crop of NXT guys were like, okay, that's the shakeup. But no, because you got Kofi Kingston in the main event. Aleister Black, Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano, Ricochet. Up, Matt Hardy's back. You got the Hardy Boys. Up, Kevin Owens is back in the main event. And oh, by the way, here comes Roman Reigns. And oh, by the way, Batista's back. So what are we doing here? People may say, well, this is too cluttered. This is too much. There shouldn't be all this going on all at the same time. But I don't buy that either. Because we don't know what's going to work, right? We can't just say, okay, we're going to call Aleister Black up, and he's going to be a main event guy for a while. And then we're going to let Kofi Kingston be a main event guy for a while. And then Gargano's coming to be a main event guy for a while. And when he's done, Ricochet's going to be the main event guy for a while. That's not how it works. You want to find the guy, or guys, you want to find that core that's going to be able to carry WWE for the next 10 years. And you want to let's put it all out there. Let's put them all on the main stage, and let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Now that Roman Reigns is back, it was a given that Seth Rollins was going to be the next guy. He was going to WrestleMania, and he was taking Roman Reigns' spot, quote unquote. But guess what? Roman Reigns is back now. So where does that leave Seth Rollins? Quite frankly, where does that leave Roman Reigns? What about these other guys? Finally, the Revival get the Raw Tag Team title. But guess what? Ricochet and Aleister Black are tearing up the tag team scene. And oh yeah, the Hardy Boys are back. Where does that leave them? You've got everything happening everywhere. And what the WWE is doing right now is they are setting up a scenario where they are allowing the cream to rise to the top. In my opinion, if you watch this show and you watch it carefully, now is the first time in a while where that brass ring really is hanging. And there really is opportunity for people to grab it. In my opinion, as a fan, there really is opportunity for people to grab that brass ring. I believe that the roster looks like it looks right now. From the some people, through some eyes, you could say it's confused. It's fuzzy. There's too much going on. But the reality is there is so much there that nobody is allowed to be comfortable. No one is allowed to be comfortable in their spots. Not Seth Rollins, not Braun Strowman, not Daniel Bryan, not AJ Styles, not Finn Balor. Nobody is allowed to be comfortable in their spots. There is no more, I put the time in, so now it's my turn. There's no turns. There's a couple of vacancies, and there's about 100 people ready to jump into them. Who is going to be accepted into those vacancies? That's up to us. That's up to the fans. But I believe wholeheartedly that what we're witnessing right now is this moment where it's not all about the new guys, because we're allowing things like Kofi Kingston to happen. We're allowing things like Becky Lynch to happen. We're bringing Kevin Owens back. We're setting him up for success. We're allowing the NXT guys to come to the main roster and shine. And who is going to come out of this? It's going to take a couple of months, I think. Probably several months. It might take the rest of the year. But when we get to WrestleMania 36, a year from now, everything is going to be different for the first time in years. And that's because opportunities being opened up. John Cena's gone. John Cena is gone. And the WWE had to taste what lunch was like when Roman Reigns wasn't at the table. So it's time to let nature take its course. And I believe that's exactly what the WWE is doing. And some people who I'm sure thought were going to be like, well, yeah, it's my time. I'm going to go, and this is just the way things are headed. It's not going to happen for them. And some people that you thought, well, this person's not going to get a shot, they're the ones that are going to shine, you know? Who knows where this all goes? I mean, I was thinking about it last night. You had, Nakamura has gone from headlining the Tokyo Dome to getting pinned in a tag match. He didn't even have to be the one that got pinned in that tag match on SmackDown. They could have pinned Rusev, but they pinned Shinsuke. Because clearly, the idea is we don't know what's going to happen with this guy. Clearly, based on his performance, the WWE is sitting there not saying the future main event scene of this company has Shinsuke Nakamura written all over it. They don't see that. And quite frankly, based on the landscape of the WWE, I don't either. I love Shinsuke Nakamura. But at this moment, I don't have that much to work with. Immediately when I watch Aleister Black, out of the 4 NXT guys that most recently came up, immediately when I see Aleister Black, I go, he could be the biggest star in the company. Aleister Black could be the Undertaker. I mean, Aleister Black is that guy. I get goosebumps when I see Aleister Black now. I look at Ricochet, and I listen to Ricochet now, and I'm like, Ricochet could be the most loved guy on the roster. Aleister Black and Ricochet are just a money-printing machine. Together or not together, it's just they represent two different elements that are required for this thing called WWE. And WWE has a huge opportunity in front of them this fall when they move SmackDown over to Fox And they're on network television, and their audience expands even more, you know? And quite frankly, competition's building. AEW is right here. This idea, we could easily see a version of this world of wrestling where there is competition for WWE. And not every show or indie wrestling. I mean, a direct competition where there is another wrestling promotion that people like better than WWE and that does big numbers. It's possible. Very possible. And there's a lot of talent out there. You know? But, I mean, I think you look at a guy like EC3, and it's like he's not even on TV right now. But EC3 has to be sitting there and going, the minute that they put a camera in my face, that they put a microphone in my hand, or they plot me into that squared circle, I've got to shine like I've never shined before. The next time EC3 is on television, it'll be the most important television appearance he's ever made. The next time Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins are on TV together, I mean, Ryder and Hawkins, I feel when I watch Ryder and Hawkins, I'm sitting there going, clearly the WWE wants to acknowledge that, look, these two guys are guys that have been here forever, but they're perennial losers. So what are they going to do? I don't think there is a higher plan for Ryder and Hawkins. You know, they're doing stuff online. They pop up on Raw every now and then. But I think WWE is saying like, hey, all right, let's see if you can get the audience interested in you. And if I'm Ryder and Hawkins, I'm sitting there going every single time, whether it's on YouTube or on Raw or whatever it is, we have to knock this out of the park. Because if we can prove that we're better and that fans like us more and that we're more dependable and we have more of the complete package than any of these other guys, we're only 33 years old. You know, these guys have been around forever, but they started so young. They could absolutely have their best run still in them. And I think WWE is providing the opportunity to get the opportunity, if that makes sense. But they got a lot of competition. You know, honestly, you're going to sit there and tell me, and this is what I mean about not everybody can be a main event guy. You're going to sit there and say, Ryder and Hawkins, wouldn't it be cool to see them win the tag titles again? Sure. Nostalgia is awesome. But if I told you Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins were going to beat Aleister Black and Ricochet, would you really be happy? Would you really think that that was the best thing WWE could do? If I sat there and told you Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins were going to beat the Usos, would you really think it was for the best? I don't think so. I don't think so. But who knows? We'll see how things evolve. We'll see how things twist and turn and change. But it really is an interesting time. And that's kind of the central theme that all of these stories here on the State of Wrestling this week have in common. That sort of change and what is going on with WWE. The number 3 story is the Ric Flair celebration. I thought it was done masterfully. You know, there's no reason, because Ric Flair is the guy that you would legit have a birthday party for on Raw. You know, when Ric Flair had his retirement ceremony on Raw after WrestleMania 24, when Shawn Michaels beat him and ended his career, there was nothing about that was, you know, wrestling. There was nothing about it that was like, oh, somebody's going to come and interrupt, or there's cheating, or there's whatever. Nothing. It's time to respect the legend. Ric Flair is the greatest of all time. It's time to pay the man his respects. 70 years old, going through a health scare. You got Sting in the building. You got Ricky Steamboat in the building. You got the 20-foot tall balloon structures. And like you heard, here's the beauty. The rumors that Batista were there were all over the internet. And some people were like annoyed that there were spoilers. Oh, I wish that had been a surprise. Look, I hate to break the fourth wall. And I don't know anything for a fact. Literally, I don't know anything for a fact. I'm not an educated man. But WWE leaked the Batista information. Like, nobody knew that Ronda Rousey was there for the Royal Rumble. Nobody knew that the Hardy Boys were there for WrestleMania. When WWE wants there to be a surprise appearance, there's a surprise appearance. They figure it out. I think that the fact that the internet knew Batista was at Raw was clearly the WWE knowingly putting that information out there so that people tuned into Raw. And genius, good on you. I think it was the right move to do. But, I certainly don't think that it was somebody that got information and then, and then spoiled it. I think WWE decided to spoil it. And I don't mind it at all because it was still a surprise. Because Batista was part of Evolution. So was Ric Flair. The idea that Batista would be there I don't think anybody saw what was coming. I didn't see it coming. I figured Ric Flair would come out and then maybe Randy Orton and Batista would join him there. Now, I did hope, based on what happened between Batista and Triple H on SmackDown a few months ago, I did hope that something was brewing between Triple H and Batista, because God, am I looking forward to that match. And if you had asked me 5 years ago, 2 years ago, if I wanted Triple H and Batista one more time at WrestleMania, I'd go, no, we're past it. It's over. But nope, wrong. After SmackDown 1000, and then this segment on Raw this week, Batista versus Triple H is one of the WrestleMania matches I'm looking forward to the most, assuming it's happening. Obviously, it's not official. But that appears to be where things are headed towards. But yeah, I figured, okay, Ric Flair is going to come out, and then Batista and Randy Orton, the other two members of Evolution, will join them, and they'll have a nice moment. I did not realize that Batista was going to kick the crap out of Ric Flair and drag him out and blah, blah, blah. I just thought the whole thing was perfect. Batista was believable. Batista has said things in the past about not wanting to be back in WWE because of creative decisions, about not being invited to certain WWE things, about this, about that. Batista is not afraid to be critical of WWE. So the fact that Batista was committing as much as he was makes me believe that he very much wants to be doing this in WWE right now. And, I mean, I think that because of what the WrestleMania 31 really was, all the interviews that he's done since WrestleMania 30, and how great he is in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, plus the fact that, and this is going way off the ranch. Now we're talking way beyond wrestling. But the way he handled Marvel firing James Gunn, Disney firing James Gunn, and as a guy who is, probably the least safe out of the four Guardians of the Galaxy, going out there and being critical of Disney and saying you should be keeping James Gunn, blah, blah, blah. I just think he's such a down dude. He's just a cool-ass dude, and people have figured that out, that everybody's ready for a Batista return. And I like the angle they're taking, man. I thought the segment was great, and it's going to be... I'm really looking forward to this Triple H match. But again, that's going back to looking at the roster. It's like, who on the roster wants the big Triple H match this year at WrestleMania? Too bad it's going to Batista. Keep working. And that's all you can do. And speaking of keep working, that's also playing out in storyline. We saw that, and it's very similar to what went on with Charlotte and Becky. But we saw that with Kevin Owens being put into the Fastlane match with Daniel Bryan. And it would appear it is going to be Kevin Owens and Daniel Bryan. It's not going to be a triple threat. They're not going to change it at the last minute. Unless they do it next week on SmackDown. Kevin Owens versus Daniel Bryan is the main event for Fastlane. And I'll tell you, I'm interested in a couple things. Number one, I think something's got to give with Kofi. This whole, it's okay, just shut up and take it, just smile and take it and keep working hard. BS. If I'm Kofi Kingston, I am lighting everybody up. If I'm Kofi Kingston and have the ability to physically damage people, people are getting physically damaged for what I went through with that dangling the carrot in front of me and then snatching it away. That is BS, and somebody's getting hurt. If I'm Kofi Kingston, everybody around me is getting hurt real bad. Real bad. But instead, he's still doing what he's told. He's being a good soldier. At some point, Kofi's got to stop being a good soldier. I don't buy it. I'm still interested in where it's going. I'm not mad at it right now. But it's got to go somewhere, because I don't buy the fact that he's just a good soldier. So I'm interested in where Kofi's going, and I'm really interested in what Kevin Owens' character is right now. Watching his vignettes, I'm going to be back in a month, and he's back a week later. Was he lying? You know, why did he keep bringing up his family? Why is he eating pizza and going bowling? You know, he looks amazing. I mean, he came back in some of the best shape I've ever seen Kevin Owens in. He looked fantastic. And it seems like he's going to be a heel. I don't think that anybody's forgiven him for what he's done. I don't think that anybody can accept him as a good guy right now. You know, I think he's got to be a bad guy. But, you know, I think that based on what he's doing and how he's tweeting and stuff, he's not exactly embracing the villainry yet. I think he will, but I don't think he is yet. You know, you could be setting up for a scenario where you want to do Kofi Kingston versus Kevin Owens at WrestleMania. Personally, I still think the Daniel Bryan match is the way to go. Could be a triple threat match. Who knows? But I think ultimately, this disappointed a lot of people. Clearly, the fan support is behind Kofi Kingston. At this WWE, you know, if this has happened a year ago, I'd go like, I can't believe WWE screwing this up. This is ridiculous. But this WWE, again, is opening opportunity for people. Is allowing cream to rise to the top. And I feel like ultimately this is going to be amazing for Kofi Kingston. And maybe SmackDown was the moment that the WWE decided, that Vince McMahon decided, that Kofi Kingston versus Daniel Bryan is not my Fastlane match, it's my WrestleMania match. I mean, and this is all because of a week before. This is 3 weeks. This is 3 weeks in the making, and this is how far we've come. That realistically, Kofi Kingston could be leaving Giant Stadium, New Jersey, with the WWE Championship. That's the craziest thing I ever heard in my life. Literally, the only person that predicted that was Hot Dog. My young boy Hot Dog. The only person that predicted that Kofi Kingston would go to WrestleMania, fight Daniel Bryan, and leave with the WWE Championship. But now, if you said, I think that that's what's going to happen, I'd go like, yeah, that's very, very likely. It's incredible. So I'm interested in seeing where the Kofi Kingston, how far, like if they're able to spin this into a net positive for Kofi Kingston, which I think they will. I don't think it should be too difficult. And I'm interested in seeing what Kevin Owens looks like now, since being gone in October. And of course, Daniel Bryan working with all of it. It was just, incredible in the role that he's in now. Speaking of being gone since October, my number one story of the week is obviously, and anybody who tells you this is not the biggest story in wrestling right now is out of their minds, is Roman Reigns coming out on Raw this week and announcing he's in remission. I mean, if that wasn't one of the greatest segments in Raw, I don't know what was. I've never seen anything that universally just cheered. Like, it's just good news. And it's amazing. I think that cancer and leukemia, it's just such a scary thing. And it's even more scary when you wrap your head around the idea that this guy, who is like the idealized version of being in good shape. I mean, as good a shape as anybody could possibly be in. As healthy as anybody could be. This is Roman Reigns. He's a superstar. And he is sick? This really could happen to anybody. That's the feeling that you get. It's scary. And so to watch him beat this thing and watch him come into remission is awesome. It really is incredible. And to see just the genuine appreciation that he has for the fact that it was all love being thrown at him. And that appreciation is real, man. I've been lucky enough to spend a little bit of time with Roman Reigns. A very small amount of time socially and a little bit of time in and around the locker rooms, and of course all the interviews that we've done that I've shared with you. And dude, this guy is as good as it gets. You know what I mean? You can like or dislike a wrestling character, but this guy is the real deal. He's not a douchebag. He's not there for the paycheck. He's not there to become famous. Roman, and as the years have gone by, Roman's appreciation and respect for all things wrestling and WWE has only grown. I mean, Roman, more than anybody, I think, wants to be that top guy and wants to eat, sleep, and breathe WWE. He wants it. You know, I mean, the being around him after he beat John Cena that night, where it was like, okay, this is the crowning moment. I think it was a year ago, October, I want to say. Maybe 2017, maybe. But he was like on a natural high after that match. And it wasn't like it was because this is a guy who is literally living a dream. There's no place he'd rather be but in the top spot of WWE. He wants to be that role model. He wants to be the guy. He wants to lead the locker room. He wants to be that guy that in 20 years, I would imagine he wants to be the guy that Mark Henry is today, the guy that is going around and protecting the business and making sure that this thing lasts for generations and generations and generations. He's a good guy. You know? He's a good dude. And he's the type of guy that you want to see good things happen to, and he works hard for good things to happen to him. So I'm really happy to see it. You know, it's pretty gross. There are people that are a lot of people on Twitter, which I don't think the people on Twitter that are saying it really believe it. You know, the thing about opinions on Twitter is that because you get to be anonymous on Twitter, you could just say stuff. So a lot of times you'll read somebody's opinion on Twitter. It's not even their real opinion. They just want to put it out there. And they know they can because it's anonymous because it's on Twitter. But like this conspiracy theory that that this is a work, or that, you know, this is just convenient and he's back for WrestleMania time and blah, blah, blah. There was a great series of tweets put out by the Leukemia Foundation, which I retweeted, explaining why there's nothing suspicious about what's going on with Roman Reigns. And you know, this is a story of hope and positivity and all this stuff that really shouldn't be befuddled or confused by adding in elements of conspiracy theory. You know, it's just kind of gross when that happens. But so happy to see Roman Reigns back. And again, just like everyone else, I'm so interested in seeing where exactly he fits in with the show that we've got right now that's known as WWE. That's it, folks. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and join us on Patreon. Support the show. It's the best way you can support the show. Sign up, be a Notsam show, patreon.com/NotsamWrestling. It starts at only $4. You get bonus shows, you get video, you get everything early. It's amazing. It's incredible. It's the greatest thing you could do. Patreon.com/NotsamWrestling. We will see you next week right here on Not Sam Wrestling.
Thanks for listening. Follow at Not Sam on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Rate, review, and subscribe. This has been Not Sam Wrestling. Not Sam Wrestling.